Hello. Hi Gray, hi Azure Phoenix. Welcome in everybody. Can I get an audio check, please? Beth, you want George to be next? Take your bets now. You say George? Or do you think it'll be someone else but you want George? Sounds good so far? Okay, thank you. And yeah, I hope Battlers last too, because we're kind of Battler POV for the most part. I feel like... Let's see, who do I think is going to be next? Maybe... I feel like another servant is next. Genji or the chef. The chef is dead, unless you're talking about Kumasawa. He died with the first 6. I think Kumasawa and Genji are the only ones left, unless you consider Nanjo. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. My brain is saying Jessica, but we'll see. Same, yeah. I can smell it. It's Jessica. I returned to the boiler room along with Aunt Natsuhi and told everyone weakly that we hadn't found anything. We heard that Dr. Nanjo and George Aniki had carried Kanon-kun to the servant room. The servant room had a first aid kit and a sink, and could apparently function as a nurse's office. Kumasawa-san and Jessica had accompanied them. Stains from Kanon-kun's blood remained on the floor. Judging by the large amount of blood lost and the ruthless shape of the weapon that had fallen carelessly to the ground, I figured that Dr. Nanjo's treatment would probably end in vain. That weapon was doubtlessly the same type that had been stuck in Aunt Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi's foreheads. But wait, isn't the demonic design on the handle a little different? There seemed to be some small differences in that part. Still, as far as their overall shape was concerned, the weapons were all of the same type. Though it had seemed brutal, we'd left the weapons stuck into Aunt Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi to preserve the crime scene. So this was the first time we were able to have a perfect view of the entire weapon. As we'd expected, the weapon was not bladed like a knife, but shaped like an ice pick. Or rather, a thin stake. And it had a spiral-shaped pattern, sort of like a drill. It looked like something that might be driven into the hearts of human sacrifices in some demonic ritual. Including the handle, it was 25 centimeters long. Half of that was the stake-shaped part, which was stained with deep red blood. The length of the blood-stained part made it clear just how deeply it must have penetrated into Kanon-kun's chest. But Aunt Natsuhi and the rest didn't even look at the weapon, and instead stood in front of the incinerator, where the horrible stench was emanating from. I bet it's Kinzo's body. They must have dragged it out. Dragged out that thing which had been burning in the furnace. Me staring at a ruler like 10 inches? Yeah. Hi Azure Phoenix, how are you? It was still smoldering, and kept sending out dense waves of that awfully unpleasant smell. Genji-san and Maria stared down at it. Aunt Natsuhi probably couldn't stand to look directly at it. She kept shaking her head, her back to it. Why did bro go into the oven? True. Why is Battler oohing? Ugh! I thought nothing could surprise me after everything that's happened. But this is... Gah! I stood there for a while, moaning, with a rising urge to vomit. The true source of that unearthly stench was a scorched corpse that had been cooking inside the incinerator. The clothes, the surface of the body, and the hair were all hideously burned. That grotesque corpse was in a state where not the face, nor the age, nor even the gender could be guessed at. Dinner! When I thought about it calmly, I realized that a corpse appearing at this time could only be one person. It was grandfather, who had disappeared that morning, and whose whereabouts had been unknown. I believe it is most likely the master. Time to read the death logs! I haven't heard the noise yet. Usually they make a little noise, but we can check. Yeah, he's still disappeared. I think they have to update it. And they'll let us know when they do, and they make a little noise. Yeah. I agree. Or maybe they won't update this one because we can't be sure if it's Kinzo or not. Because they're like, oh, well, you know, you can't tell, but it's probably him, but that means it doesn't have to be, you know? That he would pass away in such a state. It's heartrending. But is there any proof that this corpse really is grandfather? Yeah, okay, battler. It's burnt so black you can't even tell what sex it is. Battler-kun, look at the feet. Aunt Natsuhi, with her handkerchief over her mouth and her eyes averted, pointed and told me to look at the burnt corpse's feet. Sorry, guys, we gotta peep Kinzo's feet. Why are we peeping his feet? It's just, he's wearing, like, white shoes. But anybody can wear the shoes. Is there something wrong with his feet? Kinzo foot reveal is crazy. Oh! Notice how there are 6 toes on each foot. Huh? Ah. You're right. Why does he have 6 toes? Just as Genji-san had said, there were 6 toes on each foot. Each individual toe had looked so normal in its line that I hadn't noticed. Master was born with 6 toes on both of his feet. Consequently, Master was entrusted with the revival of the Ushiromiya family. I've heard that since long ago, cases of polydactyly, is that how you say it, were common in the Ushiromiya family. It's probably hereditary. Alright, everybody, how many toes do you have? Polydactyly literally means many fingers. Because of a little mistake by God when the person is born, one of their toes or fingers splits into 2, and the total number increases. Does that have some deeper meaning? I have no clue. It probably does. But a big deal isn't usually made of polydactyly in the world at large. That's because it isn't a disease, just something people are born with. So while they're still babies, at about the time they turn 1 year old, they could be taken to the hospital and given surgery to make them normal. Even a child with polydactyly can be treated before they become aware, so they might not even remember it themselves. By the way, it seems that there's a possibility for this to occur in 1 out of every 2,000 babies, so even though it's not usually seen, it isn't that rare at all. Speaking of which, I think Uncle Hideyoshi mentioned something to me long ago. Something about how even Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the man who unified Japan at the end of the Sengoku period, had 6 fingers on one hand. Google says Nephilims were supposed to have 6 fingers and toes since 07 likes Christianity. Oh, interesting. Does that mean Beatrice also? According to Aunt Natsuhi, among the many Ushiromiya family heads, the ones most praised for their wisdom all had polydactyly. Because of that, when grandfather was born, his relatives were all excited at the thought that he might become another wise leader. And when the leading relatives all died in the Great Kanto earthquake, it was apparently argued that grandfather should be the one to restore the family because of the auspicious sign of his birth. If grandfather hadn't disliked his position as the head so much, this 6th toe probably would have been pretty lucky for him. Come to think of it, I've heard about some country where it's believed that people with polydactyly should be treated as gods and revered. This is besides the point, but it's fairly common in mystery novels for a corpse to be burned to hide its identity. But I guess that, in grandfather's case, just toasting him wouldn't be enough. And grandfather's body was not simply burnt. See, there's the sound. Now he can... Oh, hello! Burned in the incinerator with a weapon resembling an ice pick sticking out of his forehead. Oh, well, spoiler. The old sorcerer's wish vanished before it could be granted. He always knew that this was one possible result of his risky gamble. Feet! Relatively unharmed feet. It was just like Aunt Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi, the thing that had been stabbed into Kanon-kun's chest. One of those demon's ice picks was stuck into his forehead. The head's ring is not on his finger. Yeah, 'cause Beatrice has it. So the letter last night was telling the truth. Father would probably be horribly disappointed. Natsuhi-san let her head droop and closed her eyes tightly. Why did it say Natsuhi-san and not Aunt Natsuhi? What? Whose POV is this? This room had also become a vital crime scene for us to hand over to the police. It was decided that we would leave Grandfather's corpse here and lock the room, sealing it. It isn't clear when Grandfather's corpse started burning in the incinerator. Since according to Genji, the strength of the flames hadn't been that strong, the body must have started burning a long time ago. So that stench could slowly creep out of the furnace and fill the room bit by bit, eventually pouring out and climbing up the staircase. Putting aside whether he was rare or well done, Grandfather had been brought out, killed, and burned, even though he had started out locked away in the closed room created by his auto-lock. There's probably no doubting this. However, according to Genji-san, the boiler room is usually locked. The possibility that someone outside our group had snuck in and committed the crime was overwhelmingly high. And there was also a good chance that this person was walking around with something like a master key. Rare done, Kinzo sounds so wrong, yeah. After all, the doors and windows throughout the mansion had been checked. But despite that, the culprit was able to strut around the mansion freely. Does this crime confirm that a 19th person exists? There's still that contradiction, since they're trying to toot their existence without ever showing themselves once. Along with Kirie-san's chessboard theory, I've been using this contradiction to deny the existence of a 19th person. By spinning the chessboard around once more, the very fact that this crime makes it perfectly obvious that a 19th person exists means that the existence of the 19th person is even less plausible. As long as that 19th person doesn't show themselves in front of us, if the culprit could get Grandfather out through the door sealed by the receipt, if they could kill Aunt Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi from the other side of a door sealed by a chain, then could they possibly go so far as to create a fictional 19th person through strange tricks and devices? Battler, what? Bro's having a stroke. If we still want to believe that the culprit is among the 18, then the list of suspects has grown very short. The four of us kids, Aunt Natsuhi, Genji-san, Kumasawa-ba-chan, and Dr. Nanjo. One of these people has to be the culprit. Wait, we can't be sure of that. Just a second ago, we started doubting whether the corpse here was actually Grandfather's, right? Maybe we could think of the other bodies in the same way. For example, the first 6 all had their faces horribly smashed. Some of the bodies had kept enough of their faces for us to confirm who they were, but that old man, for example, had lost his entire face, as though the whole thing had been neatly peeled off. We only figured out which body was which by their clothes and surroundings. Did the culprit prepare a fake body beforehand and alter it to make it look like they died, even though they were actually hiding somewhere after committing the crime? It may sound ridiculous, but it wouldn't be an impossible trick to pull off. It's too early to give in to this 19th person. No, this witch! He's coping so hard. Yeah, because, like, if we look at who died, right? Kraus is just half his face. So he's basically confirmed, right? Rudolph is his entire face. Kirie is her entire face. Rosa is also her entire face. Shannon is half. And then Goda is half? Question mark? But, like, if it was one of these 3, that means they would have had to bring the body with them on the plane. Because Rokkenjima, like, there are no other inhabitants, right? So they would have had to at least bring it with them on the boat. Which, I guess, like, if their plane was a private plane, you could? But at the same time, why would you do that, right? Like, it doesn't really, it don't make sense. Yeah, it doesn't seem to track. Maria-chan, you mustn't stare so fixedly anymore. Come on, Battler-kun. Oh, come on. Battler-kun too. I'm worried about Kanon's condition, and we mustn't remain in a place like this any longer than necessary. Let us return. Maria didn't go out with everyone else, but remained in the boiler room. The thing she was staring so fixedly at probably wasn't grandfather's body, but the demon's ice pick sticking out of his forehead. It was probably the sort of item that an enthusiast couldn't bear to ignore. I tapped her on the head. Hey, Maria, what's Beatrice after? Is it all of our lives?
Beatrice will revive very soon. At that time, none shall be left alive.
How could you laugh at something like that? Do you think you're the only one who's safe? Why don't you feel like you're in danger? Why aren't you scared?
Beatrice made a promise. She said she's gonna take me to the Golden Land. It's a wonderful place where you have no obligations, everyone's always together, and everyone's always nice to everyone else. I'm looking forward to it. That time will come, very soon now.
Just what kind of person is Maria? I only know what Maria was like 6 years ago, when she was 3. She was once pure and obedient. A good kid. This new Maria 6 years later and the Maria I knew didn't seem to fit together. Just who is she? This witch who calls herself Maria. To Maria, who obstinately believes in the witch, this series of unsolvable crimes is proof that the witch actually exists. Every time something occurs that would be difficult for a human, it becomes a little harder for the rest of us to not believe in Beatrice. It must be an intense pleasure for Maria to see her relatives, who once firmly denied the witch's existence, start acknowledging that witch's existence one by one. Is that why she's in high spirits? Maria, let me ask this one more time. You'll probably answer the same anyway, but I'll ask just once more. Yesterday, you were given a letter in the Rose Garden. Who gave it to you?
Like I said, Beatrice. Battler still doesn't believe.
Maria only repeated what she had already said. Maria met with the 19th person, the witch. Was that really a 19th person? Or did one of the 18 just get her to say that? All that's certain is that Maria has been with the rest of us constantly, has always had an alibi, and hasn't done anything suspicious. She's simply overjoyed at being made Beatrice's messenger, and certainly isn't the 19th person. I hate to break it to you, Battler, but she also probably could not shove Kinzo into the incinerator. Supposedly. That's right. I wonder what's written in the letter we picked up in Aunt Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi's room. Aunt Natsuki should still have it with her. She's a cool kid. In the end, Kanon-kun did not regain consciousness. He dead! Servant Kanon, found in the boiler room with a weapon resembling an ice pick sticking out of his chest. How presumptuous of lowly furniture like that. Oh, well that's different. Even though Dr. Nanjo and the rest did all they could to heal him. Of course, there was very little that could be done on an island like this without medicine or proper facilities. However, Kanon was the only human ever to confront the culprit. If only he could give us some kind of clue. However, at the time they carried Kanon away, it was already too late. Are those like Beatrice's comments? I feel like she's making snarky remarks about them all. She could be. But I thought it was Maria's because this one says I'll get to see her again so I don't feel lonely. So I don't know. It's like, how unfortunate. Apparently he was originally supposed to be on duty in the guest house. Don't worry, everyone will be revived in the golden... Like, it's weird. She was chosen by the demon's roulette. He has a right to lament his ill fortune. Oh. And then there's, like, this. So I don't know. My sincere apologies. Without proper facilities, there was nothing I could do about such a serious wound. No, that's perfectly understandable. Thank you so much for giving it your very best. Dr. Nanjo's shirt had been sprayed by a violent spurt of blood, so it was easy to imagine the devotion with which he had tried to save Kanon's life, up until the last second. Jessica was crouched in the corridor, crying softly. She'd probably been taking care of Kanon-kun until the moment of his death. George Aniki tried to approach her with words of comfort, but when Jessica pushed him away, he stopped trying to force her to talk and left her alone.
If only I hadn't let Kanon-san go alone. Oh.
Not let that bother you. If you had been with him, you probably would have been attacked as well. He foolishly rushed on ahead and paid for his mistake. How could you say it like that? Kanon-kun spotted the culprit and bravely stood up to them. If only Kumasawa-san had gone with him, the culprit might have hesitated and chosen to run away. Emotion-filled words that I never thought I'd hear coming from Jessica's mouth tumbled out. Kumasawa, looking truly sorry, could do nothing but hang her head. Jessica. You shouldn't talk to her now. It's the same for me. And probably you as well. Right, Battler-kun? We don't know what's going on, and it feels like our hearts are going to split open. There were tears in George Aniki's eyes again. Does she like Kanon? Maybe. Seeing Jessica break down crying probably brought back the pain of losing his parents. I'd done my crying all at once, so I didn't feel like crying anymore. However, I understood how great the pain in their hearts was.
It's okay, Jessica. You'll be able to meet Kanon again soon.
Death flag? Stop it! I don't need you trying to console me like that!
Beatrice will resurrect the dead, and even love that has been lost. So you'll definitely be able to meet him soon. Then everyone will be able to live in peace.
So the one who killed Kanon-kun is this Beatrice who supposedly gave you that letter yesterday? Where is she? Where is she hiding? I'll find her and tear her apart. Tell me, you know who the culprit really is, don't you? What do you know and what are you hiding? Tell me, dang it! Lady, please stop.
Beatrice exists!
Dang it! Let go of me, Genji-san! Maria knows who the culprit is, and she's hiding their identity even though she knows. She must be telling them what we're doing, guiding them as they kill us. Jessica, be silent. Jessica grabbed at Maria. Genji tried to stop her, but Jessica could not be calmed. The next thing I heard was the sound of Aunt Natsuhi slapping Jessica's face. After that, only Jessica's sorrowful, sobbing voice resounded through the hall. Maria-chan, I know there's no way you're the culprit. You're all going insane, absolutely. You've been with us since the beginning, and there was no time for you to communicate with any culprit. So I want you to tell me something. This Beatrice who handed you the letter yesterday, who was she? Although those words seemed kind, they clearly showed that George still had some remaining doubts about Maria. He didn't actually grab at her. However, he felt exactly the same way Jessica did. Aniki, I already asked her the same thing a second ago. Her answer was the same as before. I want to hear it from Maria's mouth. Who is Beatrice?
Even if I told you, you wouldn't believe anyway.
What do you mean by that? Could it be the culprit's someone we know well, and you're keeping silent because you're covering for them for some reason? Who gave you that letter?
I got it from Beatrice. I'll say it no matter how many times you ask. I got the letter from Beatrice.
Bro, she's a kid, calm down, true.
George Oni-chan, do you refuse to believe in Beatrice because she's not an opponent you can hit?
Does he have violent tendencies?
You want to turn your feelings of helplessness into violence and beat someone up. So you won't be satisfied unless your opponent is a human you can hit. So even if I tell you the truth, you won't accept it. So it's pointless for me to tell you. You won't believe. But I'll keep on saying it, because it's true. Beatrice exists. The door to the Golden Land will soon be opened. I'll go there. Beatrice promised. In that world, Mama is nice, Papa's with us and is also nice. I want to go there right away. Everyone's afraid of Beatrice, but that's only natural. So calm yourselves. Beatrice said so herself. By the time the typhoon is past, I'll have ended everything, she said. Ouch!
Maria, I don't mind you being talkative, but let's leave it at that for now. I'll bet this is all a pretty happy situation for you, since you're always going on about how witches exist, but keep that to yourself for now. Don't try to force that onto other people. I know I've been creeped out by this girl for a while now, but there really is something wrong with her. Don't you think so too, Battler? Genji-san? Kumasawa-san? What about you, Mom? Maria knows who the culprit is and she's hiding it. Okay, maybe she hasn't done anything directly, but she's definitely working with the criminal. That's right, she's a spy! We can't let her stay with us any longer. I'm sorry, what? Maria is still my favorite. I mean, she's the most interesting character right now by far. Maria-chan, you must realize there are times when indiscreet discussion is best avoided. That's what I mean. Yeah, like... I like Natsuki too, yeah. The way she pulled out a gun? Okay, girl boss. If you keep adding oil to the fire, even I will get very angry. Aunt Natsuki glared at Maria with frightening eyes. Maria was used to Aunt Rosa's loud style of scolding, but she apparently hadn't built up a resistance to Aunt Natsuki's quiet sort of scolding. She shrugged and kept her mouth shut. A desolate feeling filled the room. It felt as though things would just get more complicated if anyone spoke. How many people have already died? 6 people in Dad's group. After that, both Aunt Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi, Kanon-kun, grandfather. There were a whole 18 people on this island, supposedly, and 10 of those people have been killed. That's more than half of us. And right now, there's absolutely no proof that the remaining 8 people will be safe. Oh, she has the gun again. At any rate, this is no time to quarrel. Now that we're certain the culprit can enter and leave the mansion at will and strike out of nowhere, we must give our undivided attention to surviving until tomorrow. I agree strongly with Aunt Natsuki. We could figure out who the culprit is at our leisure tonight. For now, though, we're better off finding a place to barricade ourselves in. As I said this, I pointed out the clock to everyone. It was already 8 at night. We'd been receiving shocks over and over again since the early morning, and our bodies and minds were both completely tired out. There's still a long, long time until tomorrow. We needed to find some place to barricade ourselves in so we could rest our bodies and get even the smallest amount of relief. So, did Battler forget that the murderer can get into locked rooms? I agree. Everyone is already pushing their mental and physical limits, myself included. I believe it would be wise to take that into account as we move forward. That's right. There's a high probability that the enemy's got the equivalent of a master key. He's really not smart, despite him trying so hard to. Were Shannon, Kanon-kun, and Goda-san holding master keys? Yes. They were supposed to have them on their person during work. We didn't want to disturb the scene, so we didn't investigate that closely. We can't eliminate the possibility that someone stole a key from them. In the first place, we know that the culprit may have visited the servant room at some point to unlock the garden shed shutter. It's conceivable that they obtained a master key from there early on. How many master keys do you have? There were many servants serving in the Ushinomiya family. Because of that, there were several master keys. Furthermore, every time one employee started or finished working, the keys were passed between servants. And we had to acknowledge that this had probably gotten a bit sloppy at times in the past. Even if they borrowed a bundle of keys from the pockets of one of the murdered servants, is there any safe place that even those keys couldn't open? Because of the nature of our job, we've been entrusted with keys to all the rooms. All of them in the mansion and in the guest house. So in other words, no matter where we hole up and lock ourselves in, it'd just be pointless. Fellas, not even a chain could keep the culprit out. What are you saying? Fine, who cares about locking up? If you're gonna come, bring it on, dang it! I'll beat you at your own game! The enemy won't approach us from the front. I don't know about the first 6, but if we look at what happened to my parents and Kanon-kun, and even grandfather, the enemy has only gone after isolated people. Yeah, I want Jessica to be next. Be gone! They don't have the power to assault us all openly in a secure room. That's right. It's just like Aniki says. And maybe Aunt Natsuhi's rifle can serve as a deterrent to stop them from attacking. I hope that is so, but... Maria, I know you want to say something, but keep it to yourself and stay quiet for a while. Maria probably wanted to say something about how witches weren't afraid of things like guns. But if she were to say it out loud, the atmosphere around here would start to get pretty edgy. I noticed and decided to put a stop to it. If I may, I do know of just one place that cannot be entered, even with the servant key rings. Is it Kinzo's study? Where's that? That would be the master's study. I'm against this. I don't even want to think about going in grandfather's creepy room. How many keys can gain access to that room? There are 2. I always have one on my person. The other was held by the master himself, but just now I found this on the corpse in the boiler room. Genji-san took a handkerchief out of his pocket and opened it, showing us the burnt and filthy study key. To the Beatrice Shrine, let's go! Then, he showed it alongside his own key, which he had once lent to Natsuki. Normally, it would have been proper to leave the master's key for the police, but because of the master's orders to protect the safety of the study, I borrowed it for the time being. I see. Which means that Kinzo-san's study is the only place where we can be safe. It would appear that way. I don't even want to think about being shut up in that strange room all night, but it appears we must acknowledge that his room is safer than anywhere else right now. Even though grandfather locked himself up in that safe room, the culprit brought him out and killed him. We can't be certain that it's truly safe. According to your theory, grandfather cleverly found a way around that receipt trick and left the room of his own free will. If so, the room might be a good place to barricade ourselves in after all. You're too optimistic, Aniki. However, at the same time, I thought he brought up a pretty interesting point. After all, this gives us a chance to question the enemy, the witch herself, about how the sealed door had been opened. If we assume that the culprit used some technique to kidnap grandfather from his study, they'd have to show us the same trick again if they wanted to assault us in the study. And that would give us a chance to make the culprit prove how they did it right before our eyes. If she's really a witch, we'll be forcing her to use her little magic trick to open the door right in front of us. But that's probably impossible. If you spin the chessboard around, it's obvious the culprit is acting in a way that'll make us think they're a witch. If she really is a witch, all she's got to do is appear in front of us and wow us with a colorful display of magic. Since she's avoided doing that, everything must be the work of a fake witch who wants us to think she's real. Therefore, a culprit who used a technique other than magic to defeat the closed room couldn't open the door before our eyes. That's what she's been doing this whole time. What? Yeah. I don't know, man. Is grandfather's room big enough to stuff 8 people in? Yes. There's a bed, a sofa, and blankets, so while it's not luxurious, it'll be more than suitable for spending the night. There was also a sink, a bathroom, a refrigerator, and a liquor cabinet. Whoa, that's incredible. But isn't that weird? You're saying he built another house inside his house. That's pretty cramped for the last house of someone like our grandfather, who bought a whole island and realized all his dreams. That's right. After some point in time, Father probably couldn't feel at peace in any other place, even inside the mansion. We always sneered about how he shut himself up in there, and this time, we're the ones who are gonna shut ourselves up. Ha! Jessica spat the words out. Jessica-chan, it sounds like you'd rather go search for the culprit than stay shut up somewhere. Of course, I don't think we'll be able to find them if we just start searching on our own. In the end, we can't do anything but wait. Then it doesn't matter where we wait, does it? I'm not gonna run away or hide. Why don't we just take it easy in the parlor, watching TV or something, while we wait for this Beatrice-sama to appear? It's perfectly fine if she doesn't appear. There's no need for us to be the ones to expose... There's no need for us to be the ones who expose the culprit. Well said. We shouldn't take needless risks before the police arrive. Thank you, Dr. Nanjo. I think we should move to Father's study. True, we have no proof that it's safe, since Father was taken out of there. However, I can't deny the possibility that, as Battler-kun reasoned, Grandfather left the study of his own accord and was attacked outside. A while back, I proposed that strange theory as a stopgap measure. But just as Aunt Eva said, even though that trick would be possible, I couldn't explain what motive could have made Grandfather sneak out of his own study in such a troublesome way. Plus, Grandfather couldn't even have used that trick unless he knew that the receipt was wedged in the door. Aunt Eva hadn't pointed out that last part, but it's clear how absurd the theory was. Bro heard his waifu's voice and simply just teleported out to her. So true. So, does that mean the sealed door formed a closed room, just as Aunt Eva claimed? Is it an undeniable fact that Aunt Natsuhi was the culprit? If Aunt Eva were here now, she'd probably make that claim openly and blow my strange theory away. But anyway, I had to admit that a room with both a bed and a toilet, that all 8 people could be shut up in, and with only 2 keys, both of which were gathered here, had to be the safest place in the mansion right now. At the very least, I figured this would be better than just staying shut up in the parlor and hoping nothing would go wrong. But wait. Have we been safe only because we've been shut up in the parlor? What if leaving that room and moving to an unexplored location is actually more dangerous? It's useless. It's useless. It's all useless. My flimsy head is about to break out in a fever. If I keep spinning the chessboard around, right and wrong will keep switching places over and over, and I won't be able to believe anything. When it seems like the culprit is one of the 18, I want to believe in Beatrice. And once I start believing in Beatrice, I start wanting to find the culprit amid the 18. If that keeps spinning around forever, in the end, my thoughts won't have taken one step from where they started. How far back in the past was it that Kirie-san taught me about chessboard thinking? Bro just admitted to making this all up. He really did. He said it himself. He's going in circles. That concept of examining the situation by spinning it around and thinking from the enemy's side. I seem to remember being so interested by it back then, I used it to guide all my thinking. By the way, Kirie-san was Dad's co-worker back then. I never dreamed that she'd someday be added to our family. Didn't Kirie-san tell me something once? I get the feeling she once said that, while this chessboard thinking was one way to look at things, it certainly wasn't all-powerful, and it wouldn't be good to rely on it too much. Chessboard thinking is my own interpretation of something called game theory, which I read about in a book long ago. It's a very interesting subject, so you should tackle it yourself when you get into college, Battler-kun. I really want to try it! If I could study and perfect my chessboard thinking, it'd be fun to be able to read into any opponent's moves, wouldn't it? But you can't believe in it blindly. Game theory is a very deep and complicated subject. Chessboard thinking is just my interpretation that skims the surface of game theory. In order to thoroughly read your opponent's moves like you're imagining, you need to study your opponent. Additionally, while chessboard theory is convenient and practical, it isn't perfect. It has many weak points despite its convenience.
Weak points?
Yes. Chessboard thinking is founded upon game theory. When you thoroughly investigate game theory, it boils down to math. Do you know what the weak point of math is? It's noise.
In math, when you write 1 plus 1 equals 2, that process will always result in 1 plus 1 equals 2, no matter how many billions of years pass. Nothing more, nothing less. That's because there's absolutely no noise mixed in. But, for example, unlike math, the Japanese language has noise mixed in. Kanji are a good example. Old kanji and new kanji are slightly different, which represents an introduction of noise created by the changes between time periods. Isn't history the same? There are dozens of policies that seem foolish in the modern era, but were meaningful at some point in the past. Because the rules of chess are fixed, when a pair of experts are discussing one particular layout, it's possible they could reach the same conclusions, whether they're from 100 years in the past or 100 years in the future. However, if the rules of chess had gone through massive changes over time, it's possible that a discussion about the same layout would have changed as well.
That's right. Events in the world of humans are normally full of noise. Aren't human emotions that way? Even if the exact same thing occurs more than once, there's no guarantee that humans will always act in a predictable fashion. The moment we try to use a math-based theory to predict someone's actions, we must be aware that our theory has built-in weaknesses and limits.
This logic it's something. It's a lot. It's a lot of going in circles, I fear. It's like philosophy.
Simply put, chessboard thinking is extremely weak against noise and fickleness, as well as mistakes or incorrect knowledge.
That's right. Kirie-san definitely said that. Chess has always been a game where both sides play by the same rules and fight with the same conditions for victory. That's why it's possible for both sides to predict the other's moves. It's possible to read your opponent because you can always suppose they'll make the best moves they can find. But what if your opponent is fickle or a bit tired, and makes a move that can hardly be called the best? Or, what if this game actually has a special rule? Some unknown thing that only the enemy knows about and can use? In fact, what if the opponent actually has some goal other than victory? Think from your enemy's perspective. That's the basis of chessboard thinking. Which means, if you misread your enemy, the answer you draw from this process will be complete rubbish. Useless. Or also maybe humans have autonomy and can't always be predicted. True. So far, I've used chessboard theory to guess several vague bits of information about the culprit hiding behind this case, or so I think. However, I don't know anything about the culprit. Am I just playing around in a labyrinth of thought? Yes. If Kirie-san were here at a time like this, she'd probably be able to notice something with her much, much sharper thinking ability. Until the very last moment, Jessica resisted moving into Grandfather's study. But in the end, Aunt Natsuki persisted, and we decided to move there. Everyone was completely wrapped in paranoia by now. Kumasawa-san had prepared dinner at one point, but during the time we were discovering the deaths of George Aniki's parents, both the kitchen and the parlor had been left empty. Someone suggested that the food might have been poisoned while we were gone. Because of that, we were unable to even touch the food that Kumasawa-san had taken the trouble to make for us. They're not going to poison it because that's not a part of the epitaph. The manner in which the first 6 were killed was still unknown, but it certainly could have been poison. Certainly, that would allow even a single person to carry out the murder of 6 large adults. Furthermore, this idea made it easy to imagine there being only a single culprit, one who'd be afraid of Aunt Natsuki's rifle. And this was very good for our emotional stability. But the fatigue and hunger were even harsher than we'd imagined. Then, Kumasawa-san made a proposal, and we all went together to the kitchen. There, we gathered some canned food and other things that'd be hard to poison to take in with us. All of Kumasawa-san's efforts to reward us with just a little dinner on this savage day regrettably came to nothing. The food piled up in the servant cart looked just a little sad. We all started climbing the stairs. Aunt Natsuki, who was in the lead, warily stared into the darkness with both eyes and the barrel of with both eyes and the barrel of the gun. Once we dragged ourselves up to the 3rd floor, just as Aunt Natsuki had warned us of beforehand, there was a mixture of a chemical smell and a sickly sweet aroma, a stench hanging in the air that felt like it was eating into our heads. I see. This kind of stench probably would give you a headache if you were shut in with it for a whole night. I know it's a little late, but I'm with Jessica. I vote against going into Grandfather's study. Felt like the stench was floating out from this magnificent door. It was the door to the forbidden study, which should defend against anyone who should enter. While Genji-san unlocked the door, Maria stared at the door and the doorknob with great interest.
Ooh, incredible door.
Looks old and strict, like it'd stop any jokes cold. A perfect door for Grandfather's study.
The power to ward off spiritual menaces is strong here. Beatrice probably couldn't open this door.
Oh. Oh? Okay, well that's interesting. What does that mean? Maria pointed at the doorknob. Oh, scorpions. A scorpion crest. No. A design like a magic circle arranged around a scorpion was inscribed there. That design. That's right. Isn't it just like those keychain charms Maria gave Jessica and me yesterday?
The 5th magic circle of Mars is a strong ward against magic. Additionally, this magic circle was very diligently constructed and is full of power. Such a magic circle can be quite troublesome to beings of magic like Beatrice.
Isn't that comforting? Are you saying we can escape even Beatrice's clutches in this room? Okay, but here's the thing. If Kinzo is so obsessed with seeing Beatrice again, why would he put that on his door? Our little witch here sure is reliable. Then how did Beatrice get Grandfather out?
Just as Battler reasoned. Beatrice can't go inside. However, she has both magic and familiars. Using them, she might have been able to get Grandfather to leave the study of his own accord.
Ah, I've read about that in manga. I've seen a bunch of scenes where vampires were frightened of crosses so they couldn't get close. But their familiars were just fine, so they made their familiars attack. Unless Beato made it to escape other people? I don't know. That's true.
Those scorpion keychain charms I gave you yesterday also had the 5th magic circle of Mars on them. The power dwelling within them was weak, but they should be enough to protect you until we leave the island. Although it sounds like you've lost yours, right?
Scorpion keychain charms? Yeah, the charm I gave you yesterday was something I got from Maria. I heard it would repel magic if you put it on your doorknob, and at the time, I thought maybe it'd be better if you had it. Is that so? I thought it was an odd thing for you to be carrying around.
Aunt Natsuki put that on her doorknob?
Yes. Last night, after hearing about it from Jessica, I hung it from the doorknob on the inside of my door.
Then Aunt Natsuki, you're really fortunate. If you did that, Beatrice probably couldn't even lay a finger on you yesterday. I think Beatrice must have been really annoyed.
Beatrice? Annoyed? Couldn't lay one finger. Natsuki thought back on that eerie scribble she'd seen that morning, as though someone had been tearing at the outside of her door with blood-soaked hands, and gasped in surprise. It's hard to know whose side she's on. What, Maria? Yeah. It sounds to me like she's just watching everything happen. Could it be that this witch who called herself Beatrice tried to enter through the door to Natsuki's own room? But the magic-repelling charm had been hanging from the inside, so she couldn't break through the door. So she was annoyed. So she scratched at it? Quit it. Don't talk about that. Witches don't exist. The culprit does. And they're a human, just like us. If you need proof, why don't we dice her up and see if her blood is red? Dang it. Dang it. How could you do that to Canon-kun?
Genji unlocked the door. 8 people entered Kinzo's study. Grandfather's study. I'd heard rumors about it beforehand, so I wasn't that shocked. Girl does not care about her dad. Yeah, no, she does not care. She's more worried about the servant boy. He'd done nothing more than fortify it thoroughly with his occult hobbies. If Grandfather's hobby had been chasing after pop idols, these walls might have been buried beneath idol posters. Even if I didn't understand it, I did realize that this room was a bundle of all his pastimes. Even so, I couldn't help but remain dumbfounded by the smell of his creepy medicine and the sweet stench that seemed to melt my head. It's his bias! Exactly, his Oshi. Let him stand! When the door was closed, it automatically made a clunk. But when the door was closed, it automatically made a clunk. I see. This is the auto lock that's activated whenever the door is closed. And there were only 2 keys that could open this door from the outside, both of which were in this room. In other words, it had become a closed room. The shutter, the receipt, the chain, and now the auto lock. This 4th door had the most magnificent lock yet, and this was doubtlessly a closed room. Just to make absolutely sure that the room was secure, we checked all over for ways in or out. The window was tightly locked. This should have been enough, but just in case, we tried knocking all over the walls. After all, we talked about there being a hidden door in this room, but we couldn't find anything suspicious. Grandfather's study was very large. Even though we called it a study, it wasn't really a single room. It could be divided up into 4 basic sections: a study section, a bedroom section, a toilet/bathroom section, and a section for cooking that had a sink. I see. This study really does have enough in it to live in. Now I see how Grandfather could live his whole life in this room without ever leaving. It seemed Grandfather wasn't in the habit of watching TV, because there was no television or even a radio in this room. We can't do anything except pass the time listening to the sound of the rain, until tomorrow morning. Dr. Nanjo looked closely at the chessboard that sat on the table in front of the sofa and muttered. It was apparently the partly finished chess match he'd been playing with Grandfather until yesterday. The black had the white pretty well cornered, and it looked like the checkmate would be reached within a few more moves, the last part of the endgame. Even though checkmate had almost been reached, the endgame had been rushed, and in the end was never completed. Kinzo-san, it seems we weren't able to see this match through after all. Dr. Nanjo, I was Kinzo-san's friend for a long time, but I never knew about more than half of him. I believe 2 Kinzos existed, a wise one, and one trapped by some madness. I never understood anything about him.
Especially when it came to Beatrice-sama. It would seem like his personality changed.
In the direction of Kumasawa-san's upward gaze, a portrait of Beatrice could be seen. It wasn't massive like the one hanging in the entrance hall, but small, made for this room. Grandfather probably spent every day in this room, and so much of his time talking to the witch in that portrait. Who was Beatrice to Grandfather in the first place? Right now, you couldn't just explain it away by saying it was a story made by the parents to frighten children away from wandering into the forest. While eating the canned food we'd brought from the kitchen, we talked together about who Beatrice was. Whether the culprit was Beatrice herself or someone pretending to be her. Whether they were a witch or a human, that was besides the point. The woman in this portrait was strongly related to the roots and background of this case. You couldn't talk about this case without talking about her. That's right. Mom, you picked up the culprit's letter in Aunt Eva's room, right? Yes. I still haven't opened it. Let's give it a try. Aunt Natsuhi took out the western envelope. Genji-san pulled a paper knife out of the drawer in the study desk and handed it to her. While watching her open it, George Aniki grimaced slightly. After all, it was a letter left at the site where his parents had been murdered. There was a good chance its contents would say something unbearable to Aniki.
Aunt Natsuki also seemed to realize that. So she glanced over the contents first without reading it aloud. We were a little frightened that she might grimace after reading something shocking, but she just frowned unhappily. What does it say? There is one unpleasant sentence. It must be trying to provoke us. Natsuki, after deciding that the contents could be shown to the children, set it openly on the table. Everyone stared at it at the same time. Praise my name. What the hell? Wow. That is what they're supposed to do. That's annoying. It's probably Beatrice declaring herself the victor. Dang it. I'll bet you were hoping another weird magic circle would show up.
It wasn't a magic circle, but my expectations haven't been betrayed.
What could it mean? I wonder if she wants to toot her own existence. That seems reasonable. With this letter, we now know that the author of last night's letter is the culprit. I think the identical envelope is more significant than what is written here. Without a doubt, this is the type of envelope and sealing wax that the master used.
Oh, I don't know what's going on anymore. This is the first time I've seen anything like this since I started working for the Yushinomiya family.
Going by last night's letter, Beatrice is claiming to be Grandfather's oldest confidant. Grandfather often said the same thing in the past, right? I spoke to Genji-san and Kumasawa-san, who nodded together. Guess that means you two know more about her than anyone except Grandfather. Could you tell us? For a long time, I've purposefully avoided this topic. But now that it's come to this, I can no longer do so. Genji, tell us everything you know. Genji-san didn't answer. Did he remain silent despite his knowledge, or did he know nothing at all? Still, I had a good guess. The ghost story of the witch Beatrice had long been deified among the servants. We're all ears, Genji, spill the tea! He'd probably been very close to Grandfather and his occult hobbies. So there was a good chance that he'd been indoctrinated with even weirder things, and had increasingly come to deify the witch. As Grandfather's most trusted servant who had sworn loyalty to him, he might be the most influenced by the illusion of the witch that Grandfather had created. So there was only one reason for Genji-san to remain silent. He could speak, but it would definitely cause a backlash, so it was better if he kept his mouth shut, and it wasn't like we'd believe him anyway. Something along those lines. A short while ago, Maria had been more than willing to speak bluntly and unrestrainedly, and that had earned her a scuffle with Jessica. It was natural for Genji-san to keep his silence. Why are you afraid of scuffling with Jessica? You could beat her up! We want the tea. Was she Father's concubine? His concubine? That could be possible. For ordinary poor people, polygamy isn't only viewed negatively from a moral perspective. Hello? Yeah. It's also an unmaintainable financial situation. But that isn't the case for the very rich. It's possible for them to have another lover in addition to their real wife. We can't deny the possibility that Grandfather had another woman in his life besides Grandmother. Maybe... When Grandmother was alive, I hear she was pretty sure of it. She thought he was cheating on her. I always thought she meant Grandfather's imaginary witch. Now this is getting really interesting. You told me, didn't you, Genji-san? You said Beatrice has been working for Grandfather since before the mansion was finished. I heard that the construction of the mansion was completed in Showa 27, or 1952. That would mean this person called Beatrice was in a relationship with Grandfather since at least 30 years ago. Could that concubine of 30 years ago, or maybe a relative or hidden child with that person, hold some kind of grudge and be planning revenge? I see. This is starting to sound just like your standard Western mansion mystery. It's a filthy topic, but the easiest line of reasoning to accept. What do you think, Genji? Master surely had feelings of deep love for her. There can be no mistake that he cared for her more than his late wife.
Who is this person called Beatrice? And what is she doing now?
She's standing right behind you. I have heard that she passed away before the mansion was completed.
She's already dead?
Yes. The master was deeply stricken by grief at her loss, and he devoted himself to the art of black magic as a means to revive her. The master loved Beatrice-sama from the bottom of his heart. It was that madness which drove him to do all that you see here.
As Genji-san said this, he spread his arms, as though asking us to look at this room, filled with the signs of grandfather's madness. We were all at a loss for words. Normally, black magic seems like it'd just be creepy, and it's really hard to imagine why someone might be so enraptured by it. Since Kinzo was just an eccentric who had restored the Ushinomiya family amidst his madness, nobody had tried to understand him. The only thing on grandfather's mind had been the loss of a beloved woman, and his inescapable sorrow. Earlier, this room had seemed creepy, but in an instant, it had changed into something we could understand completely. Okay. Alright. Call me a hater. I don't think that losing someone you love should make you resort to black magic, but alright. The creepy books, the magic circles, the medicine, all of it. It all existed simply because he wanted to revive the face of a single woman who had left his world over 30 years ago.
The master only told me about Beatrice-sama's story once, when he was very drunk.
The Ushinomiyas cannot cope, you're so right. It's genetic.
Although I have forgotten the details. It was a deep, deep love, enough to make a woman like me jealous.
When Kinzo-san succeeded the headship of the Ushinomiya family, his marriage to his late wife had already been decided by the few surviving family elders. So, he was forced into a marriage with some woman who would benefit the Ushinomiya family. That is correct. Kinzo-san was installed as the head who would revive the family, and had to bear the entirety of that heavy responsibility. I do not pretend to know the details of when or where Kinzo-san first met her. I guess it'd be rude to say any more than that. That was when grandfather truly fell in love for the first time. Just how deep was his affection for her? That was easy to see just by looking around us. This room was covered with piles upon piles of things having to do with black magic. And his grandfather spent every day shut in here, immersed in his research and isolated from the outside world, never regretting 1 minute of it. You couldn't help but recognize the depths of grandfather's love for Beatrice. I had it all wrong, Genji-san. What do you mean by that? I've always thought that maybe you servants believed blindly in the witch because you were influenced by grandfather's creepy black magic hobby. But that's not how it was, right? By acting as though Beatrice's soul, at least, had been restored, and existed inside the mansion, they might have hoped to soothe grandfather's heart. With closed eyes and the expression of one remembering something from the distant past, Genji had broken his long silence. In making that confession, he probably felt like he was betraying his one and only master in the most serious way, even though that person was already dead. But I feel like, I don't know, I find it hard to believe that Genji would straight up lie to Battler if he... Because in the kitchen, right, when all the servants were like, Beatrice exists,
at Battler, and Battler was like, "Nuh-uh," and they're like, "She's standing right behind you, bro." I don't think he'd do that if he didn't believe, you know? I don't know. Why is no one concerned his lover is a witch killing everyone? True. Yeah, I agree. It's just weird. Beatrice has revived as a witch, and she's in the mansion even now. Genji had said it. Had believed it. Had made people believe it. And would take that with him to the grave. This might have been the last service he could offer up to his master. The legend of the witch, the mysterious tale of Rokkenjima that was still whispered amongst the servants. Its true nature was a sad lie. But I don't believe it. I simply do not. No, it was an act of kindness towards grandfather, who had lost the person he loved above all else. I remember denying the witch's existence in front of father on multiple occasions. Now I finally understand how much of that must have wounded him. Right now, I can understand very well. If I thought I could revive Shannon using black magic, I'd immediately become the next owner of this room and start researching. Aniki. Another strand of tears dripped from George's eyes. Maybe his tears were infectious. Tears rose to Jessica's eyes too, and she sniffled.
Beatrice has said it. Very soon, she'll be able to revive people.
They cannot cope, absolutely not.
You'll be able to meet them, she said.
Very soon, the door to the Golden Land will be opened. In the promised land that glitters gold, the souls of all the dead will be resurrected, along with the love that has been lost. Then I will sleep in a world of peacefulness for all time. Did she say that? The Beatrice who gave you the letter?
You don't believe, do you?
If only grandfather were here, I'm sure he'd be happy. I'm sure he'd be jumping for joy now that Beatrice is about to be revived. In that case, I believe. If grandfather gave up half of his life for this research, trying to resurrect the soul of the woman he loved and spending the rest of his life believing, I'll believe too.
Battler.
When you love a single woman for so long, the people around you catch on to it, and it becomes the truth. Maybe you could say they're just being polite for the sake of your feelings. But right here, now, I'd like to call that magic. Why is this cringe? 'Cause it is! What do you mean love wins? No!
It isn't just being polite. It really is magic. She's a witch. It looks like nobody could see Beatrice after all.
Some time passed. As we listened to the sound of the rain, we considered what kind of love and madness must have possessed the owner of this room as he spent half of his life here. The magic is the friends we made along the way! Alas, there are no friends here, only family. I don't know if it counts. If you ask me as a woman, then while I'd like to be understanding of father's feelings of true love, it did leave mother in an awkward position. Haha, I agree. Cheating is cheating. No way to make it pretty. I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Kinzo did not love his wife because he had Beatrice. But they still had 4 kids? Okay. Sure. Yeah, that's right. Gotta feel sorry for grandmother. So, have there been any rumors about a child between Beatrice and grandfather? The keyword Beatrice has been hidden in every corner of this case. That's why he hates them, I guess. You know, fair enough. So it's natural to suspect some relative of hers. No, I have not heard of anything like that. If there was one, a memento of his most beloved person,
he surely would have given them all of his affection. Since he ended up immersing himself in black magic instead, maybe we should assume that there was no such child.
Come to think of it, that reminds me of a rumor I heard. You know it, right? That story about how grandfather heavily supported an orphanage called the Fukuin House?
Enough of that. That is nothing more than slander which could desecrate father.
But tell us, Aunt Natsuki. I think even you'd agree that this is no time to hide things from each other.
It's a worthless story. Father made massive donations to an orphanage and had the orphans employed as servants of the head family, to give them some on-the-job experience. The story in question is simply some drivel spread by fools, who claim that father was using those orphans for some filthy hobby.
Hello?
For a while, some guys even said he was collecting human sacrifices for his black magic.
And he really is doing weird experiments and ceremonies in his room all the time, so I half believed it myself.
Hello? All these servants who came from the Fukuin house are? There are several of them, but Shannon and Kano were the two scheduled during the family conference shift.
Kinzo worse than Takano? That's crazy.
Or...
because Takano was also an orphan.
Parallels?
She was an orphan, and that orphanage is real sus.
To resurrect Beatrice, he brought in servants from an orphanage as human sacrifices?
Unless the Fukuin house would be considered, what is it, the House of Love and Blessings, I think it was called?
But I don't know.
After all, everyone grandfather selected as a servant was young, about the same age as Shannon or Kanon-kun. I was sure it was because grandfather had some bizarre hobby.
Jessica, mind your words.
When Aunt Natsuki scolded her, the atmosphere instantly went sour and everyone fell quiet.
However, something was tugging at the back of my mind. Sacrifices. Sacrifices. Human sacrifices brought over from an orphanage. What is it? Freaky words like sacrifices don't pop up often. And yet, I'd seen or heard that word recently.
Sacrifices.
Some part of my memory is tugging at me. Hey, Beatrice, what do you know?
I had arrived in front of the portrait of Beatrice. It wasn't as massive as the one in the entrance hall, but that portrait, which must have been drawn by some famous painter, was still just as intimidating in this smaller size. Below it, just like in the entrance hall, was the epitaph that supposedly hinted at the location of the hidden gold.
Ah. Sacrifices. Here.
What the hell, Battler? You're creeping me out.
6 sacrifices.
Ah!
Both of my eyes were as wide as plates. Everything's been predicted right there from the very beginning. Everyone crowded around, and the same expression of shock rose to all of our faces. That's right. It's right there in the epitaph.
Bruh, we've only been talking about this for the past how many streams?
On the first twilight, offer the 6 chosen by the key as sacrifices.
There's no doubt!
6 people died in the beginning! And even on the shutter where the magic circle was drawn, no, where the Hebrew was written, it mentioned the offering of sacrifices.
Ugh. I've been saying that from the beginning.
That's right. Maria said it at the start. Right after we found the 6 bodies, when Maria was in the parlor watching TV, she said it.
Ugh. The culprit isn't human. It's just the sacrifices chosen by the key.
This has nothing to do with the location of the hidden gold. It's the instructions for the resurrection ceremony using black magic or something. After all, this epitaph requires a large number of deaths.
It sure does. Even reading through it quickly, there would be 6 plus 2 plus 5. 13 people who must die.
How many people are normally on this island? It changes depending on the shifts for the servants, but there's Father, my husband, Jessica, and me.
Rolling my eyes so hard, they're so slow.
And 2 or 3 servants. Today and yesterday, there were 5 of them, but there aren't normally that many.
Which means that normally, there wouldn't be enough sacrifices to carry out this ceremony. No, wait. There's that rumor that Grandfather was collecting servants from an orphanage to be used as sacrifices in some creepy ceremony. So what does this mean? He increased the number of servants to increase the number of sacrifices, and waited for the annual family conference when even more people would gather? Isn't now the only time of year this ceremony could be held? When Jessica screamed this, Maria broke out in that creepy laugh, looking truly pleased.
Haven't you ever heard of people making bets to test their fate?
Like throwing a sandal and saying that if it lands right side up, tomorrow will be sunny. Or saying that tomorrow will be a good day if a coin lands heads up. There are many little superstitions like that. Sometimes, when your luck is down and you get bored, and you roll the dice and get 3 6s, you want to believe it's a portent of some miracle. When flipping a sandal, you have at worst a 50% chance. Even if you get it right side up, it's not worth much. But if you carelessly roll 3 dice and they all come up as 6, you might think that's a small miracle.
Magic works the same way. You must pray earnestly for an extremely unlikely result. Then, the feelings from all those stored-up prayers gain magical power and become incarnate. The magic that Grandfather was trying to perform was probably like that. Like he randomly selected sacrifices in a lottery. So to reduce the chance that he himself was selected, he chose the day with the greatest number of people on the island to carry out the ceremony.
Ridiculous! Are you saying that this entire situation was caused by a mere ceremony for some bizarre magic? Natsuki yelled. She couldn't quell the fear that a scorpion charm might be the only reason she was still safe. If I hadn't received that charm from Jessica and hung it from my doorknob, would I have been killed, mixed in along with those 6? And the strangest part is, even though I hung my charm from the inside of my door, they couldn't get through that door. The culprit noticed the charm from the outside. The culprit noticed the charm from outside the door and gave up trying to open it. A human couldn't have perceived that. A charm meant to stop something that was not human had done exactly that. Impossible! Impossible! Impossible!
But Natsuki-san, the epitaph certainly does continue to fit even after that.
On the second twilight, those who remain shall tear apart the 2 who are close. Could this be talking about Iva-sama and Hideyoshi-sama?
Painful as it may be, we must reach that conclusion. And after the culprit killed them, they left the words from the 3rd twilight in a letter there.
That's right! After carrying out the 2nd twilight, they left the 3rd twilight in that place. The 3rd twilight was just like Aunt Natsuki just read. On the 3rd twilight, those who remain shall praise my noble name. If you read it this way, it just keeps going on, doesn't it? On the 4th twilight, gouge the head and kill. Gouge the head and kill. George Aniki's parents were killed with those demon's ice picks gouged into their heads. But if they were the 2nd twilight, someone else must have been gouged in the head. Yeah, Kinzo. That's Grandfather. He was burned in the incinerator, and our eyes were so drawn to that part we didn't notice. But his forehead... No, his head had been gouged. Grandfather was the victim of the 4th twilight? Then Canon-kun was... On the 5th twilight, gouge the chest and kill. At least they're figuring it out? True. Alright, guys. What is the next one? Stomach? Protect your tummies!
We thought Canon-kun's case was an unexpected encounter with the culprit, but that's wrong. From the very beginning, they planned to lure someone out, alone, and drive something through their chest. If the culprit has followed the epitaph this far, does that mean 3 people still have to die?
On the 6th twilight, gouge the stomach and kill. On the 7th twilight, gouge the knee and kill. On the 8th twilight, gouge the leg and kill.
Yes. You could read it that way. Eep.
Well, I wonder about that. After those 3 die, it reaches the 9th twilight. Take a look. On the 9th twilight, the witch shall revive, and none shall be left alive. We're all gonna be killed by Beatrice. I don't get it. Wouldn't that mean everyone dies no matter how many people there are? What was Grandfather after? Doesn't this mean the ceremony would kill him too, no matter what?
It's okay if no one's left alive. On the 10th twilight, we finally arrive at the Golden Land.
On the 10th twilight, at Journey's End, you shall attain to the power of the Golden Land's treasures, once and for the last time. The witch shall praise the wise and bestow 4 treasures.
Grandfather wasn't afraid of dying. Look at the 2nd and 3rd of the 4 treasures.
1 shall be the resurrection of all the dead souls. 1 shall be the resurrection of the love that was lost. So Grandfather believed he would eventually be revived, even if he died partway through this ceremony? Ridiculous! That's insane! When you die, it's over, right? The dead don't come back to life. Isn't that a miracle humanity's been chasing after for thousands of years and still hasn't accomplished? So is this what that means? Something like, you'll be able to meet them in the afterlife where they'll be restored? If what you're saying now is right, would that mean that Grandfather, whose remaining life is slim and who's been driven mad by love, is committing suicide? No, a massive forced group suicide? Genji, is such a thing possible? I don't know. Master is a man who sometimes has the wisdom to see 1,000 years into the future. However, there are times when that appears to be nothing more than madness to commoners such as myself. Okay, should we take that for a yes? What do you say, Kumasawa-san?
I don't know anything. That's right. I don't know. Do you think I would be on this island today if I did know? If I did know, I would have faked an illness or done anything to take the day off. That's right.
What about your opinion, Dr. Nanjo? You've been Grandfather's friend for many years. I feel the same as Genji-san. She's real. Kinzo-san was a man who far surpassed ordinary people. I've even felt a sort of inhuman power from him at times. Even I don't know what Kinzo-san was thinking when he wrote that epitaph. All we can say is that even if Father did write this script, someone else is carrying it out. That's right. At the very least, there's another culprit who attacked Grandfather and Kanon-kun. Furthermore, that person is still continuing the crimes, just as the epitaph says. The letter in the beginning that we didn't think deeply about. What was it that was written there? We thought back to the recitation of the letter last night. Beatrice had proclaimed something inside it. She proclaimed that, according to her contract with Kinzo, she would collect everything of the Yoshinomiya family's interest. But then, she also revealed a special clause. If someone discovered the location of the gold Grandfather had hidden, that right would be lost. When the letter was read, Grandfather was still alive. But at that time, it had already been sealed with wax by the head's ring, which meant Grandfather had handed the ring over to Beatrice while he was still alive. If we take a straightforward approach, maybe we should assume Beatrice is carrying out that strange contract, with Grandfather guaranteeing her that right. In other words, this was the same as saying Grandfather knew and approved of the contents of the letter. In other words, it's basically a joint message from Beatrice and Grandfather, telling us that Beatrice will start collecting interest if we don't solve the riddle. In other words, Grandfather and Beatrice were demanding that we try and solve the riddle of the epitaph. And if we couldn't, they were saying that the massacre would be carried out according to the epitaph. What does that mean? What do they want? I don't have a clue what it means.
Look!
Oh my gosh, my voice. They want you to solve the riddle, that's what it means? Yeah, it kinda says it.
Look!
I cannot.
Look! Another letter from Beatrice.
Huh? What did you say? Maria was pointing at the top of the table, where the canned food everyone had been eating just now still lay. A Western envelope from Beatrice certainly was sitting there. But so what? What in the... Aunt Natsuki let out a hysterical cry, looking between her own hand and the table, because the envelope she had just opened was still grasped in her hand. So why is there still an envelope on the table? What the hell? What's going on, Maria? Where did that envelope come from?
Just now. I looked and it was lying there. Ugh. I don't know anything. Anything!
This isn't funny. There's only the 8 of us here. There's no way some 9th person snuck in. There wasn't enough time during the few seconds that we gathered around the portrait, right? Get back, all of you! Back against the wall! Wait, do you hear that? What was that? The music? OMG English, yeah! English? Maybe open the letter, true. Aunt Natsuki was pointing the rifle at Genji and the others, bellowing at them. Genji-san was overpowered, his face looking like he didn't have a clue what was going on. Wait, here it goes again. Never mind. I heard something mind? Of course, I felt the same. But a few moments late, I reached the same conclusion Aunt Natsuki had. Until just a few seconds ago, there had been no letter like this on the table. And nobody entered this room. The song slaps? Absolutely. That means someone among us placed it there during the few seconds when everyone was looking away, preoccupied with a portrait. Battler-kun, open the envelope and read what's inside. Sure. I picked it up. It was still sealed with wax. Even without disturbing its contents, I realized that this was an as-yet unopened envelope. An unknown envelope. Without relying on a paper knife, I tore it open and pulled out the letter inside. The contents were as follows. Are you enjoying the riddle of Kinzo-sama's epitaph? As you're all probably aware, you have very little time remaining. Please abandon any naive hopes of escaping after the storm passes. This game can only end with my victory or yours. When time runs out, I will win by default. There will be no ties. Make sure that you do not misunderstand your current situation. That's what it says. It isn't clear who put this letter there. However, I've been able to narrow down the list of suspects. It's you all.
Madam, that's just too horrible.
Just before I moved towards the portrait, I set a can of food down here. At that time, there definitely wasn't anything as strange as this letter there. And at that time, Jessica, George-kun, and Battler-kun were already in front of the portrait, and they didn't leave the spot in front of the portrait until the letter appeared. So the person who set that letter down is one of you four. Beatrice is here.
We aren't Beatrice. Beatrice exists.
Silence! I don't know whether I should suspect one of you or all of you. But without a doubt, at least one among you is the culprit. That's right! There can't be a 19th person. There's no way witches exists. Even when Kanon-kun was killed. Yeah, that could be explained if Kumasawa-san was the one who did it. The truth is that Kumasawa-san entered the boiler room with Kanon-kun and killed him. And then she lied, saying that he'd already fallen when she got there. You're making a mistake, milady. Why would I do something like that? I don't have the slightest idea how my parents were killed in that closed room. When they were killed, everyone except for the servants had an alibi. Something of a delusional mind, something don't understand. The only ones who didn't were the servants. But does that really mean it's okay to suspect them? Yes, now that you mention it, they have no alibi for any of the cases. Ugh. Something 10 something, everyone will be dead and then evil laughter. Should we really be so quick to make that judgment? But this time, in this room, in this place, in this moment, in this minimally small bit of time and space, it's obvious. Only one of the four of them could have set the letter there in our blind spot. We can't tell who put it there, but it's obvious that one of the four did it. Natsuhi-san, please calm yourself. A lot has happened today. I understand how much strain is on your mind right now. Dr. Nanjo, it truly pains me to call you suspicious. However, you are Father's personal doctor and his closest friend. You have been by his side for many years, and you might even know about Beatrice. Could you be hiding some kind of old obligation? Of course not. Calm yourself. It was pitiful to watch Dr. Nanjo frantically pleading his innocence. It was probably a normal reaction that anyone would give if they were suspected. Kumasawa was the same. Ever since Jessica voiced her suspicions of Kumasawa murdering Kenon, Kumasawa had been totally flustered. That was why Genji's still calm appearance looked so bold. Aunt Natsuhi pointed the barrel of the gun. Genji, you were grandfather's #1 subordinate. Was Beatrice an illusion you showed to father, with you as the performer? Yo, that'd be crazy! Genji cosplaying Beatrice? Let's see it. If by suspecting me, you recognize me as the Master's greatest servant, then I count it a great honor, regardless of the circumstances. However, I am not the one who put the letter there. Do you expect us to just accept that? You must be the ringleader. Maybe Kumasawa and Dr. Nanjo are your accomplices. And Maria-chan too. Not content to suspect just the adults, Aunt Natsuhi pointed the gun relentlessly at Maria too. But Maria acted as though nothing had happened. Or maybe, she thought she'd be fine even if she was shot. Maria-chan, by this point, we can no longer remove someone from suspicion just because they are young. So for the last time, let me ask the question that everyone's had since last night. Yesterday, who was the Beatrice who handed you that letter? Maria, don't dodge the question! Make it clear! Who gave you that letter?
How many times do I have to tell you? It's Beatrice, the 1,000-year-old golden witch. If you want to know what she looks like, just turn around. See? She's right there. Beatrice is.
Don't mess with us, Maria! Enough, Jessica. Maria, too. Don't you understand the situation? What are you hoping to gain by saying stuff like that? Stop stirring each other up pointlessly.
I don't understand.
My girl, show yourself, please.
Who do you all want the culprit to be? You only believe in Beatrice when you don't want to suspect one of your own. When you're trying to settle a grudge because someone who's close to you has been killed, only then do you want to believe in a human you can attack with violence and deny Beatrice. That's why you can't see her. Beatrice exists. You all can't see her.
Silence! I don't want to label you as the culprit, but there's no longer any doubt that you enjoy making this situation unpleasant and are providing assistance to the enemy.
Then what'll you do? Shoot me? I don't mind. Very soon, the door to the Golden Land will be opened. Then all the dead will be resurrected. Right now, death is nothing to be afraid of.
Mom, she really is suspicious. We can't keep her with us. But Aunt Natsuhi, please, calm down. There's no reason to shoot Maria. Please remain composed. The letter was meant to provoke us, but it's nothing to be afraid of. Even the culprit is scared of what'll happen tomorrow. They're scared of the police. Right now, this island is free from the reach of the law, but that's only because it's isolated by this typhoon. Once the typhoon passes, the law will return. So you mustn't shoot. How could you stay so calm, George Nissan? One of these four is the culprit. No, maybe all four of them are working together. How could you stay so calm when one of those four might be the culprit who killed your parents? Even I have the desire to find the culprit and kill them, but that would be simple barbarism. I will leave the judgment of crimes to the law. So no matter how suspicious they are, you mustn't pull that trigger. I feel the same as George, Aniki. Aunt Natsuhi, get a hold of yourself for a second. Anyway, it'd be bad to shoot. In times like this, I hear you should tilt your head back and say, "Stay cool," 3 times. Let me make this clear. Witches don't exist. Not on Rokkenjima, not in the Ushinomiya mansion. I declare it as Ushinomiya Natsuhi, representative of the Ushinomiya family. There's no witch here. I won't accept Beatrice. No matter what you're planning, I won't let you lay one finger on my daughter or the rest of them. That is my duty as a mother and as representative to the family. Those words were the final words of farewell. That settled everything. To protect her daughter, Aunt Natsuhi would regard any suspicious person as an enemy. The only reason George, Aniki, and I were standing on this side was because, by coincidence, we had a clear alibi regarding the letter. If I hadn't approached the portrait, I would also be at the other end of that gun barrel, treated like a criminal. But even though part of me thought that, part of me was thinking that chasing all the suspicious people from this room would finally guarantee our safety. Genji-san and Kumasawa-san and Dr. Nanjo, all of them were on grandfather's side. Maybe you could say that once Maria started blindly believing in Beatrice, she was also on grandfather's side. That's right. They were all suspicious. But is this really okay? If we throw out all of the suspicious ones in such a lawless way, will we still have the right to defy the lawlessness of the witch? Oh my gosh. Okay, I think we're gonna end here for today. My voice is so dead. Okay, wait, but we can... Hold on. Go back. We have the new letter. Let's take a look. Don't die? Yeah. I'll try. Yes, thank you for coming. Let's see. Are you enjoying the riddle of Kinzo-sama's epitaph? As you're probably all aware, you have very little time remaining. Please abandon any naive hope of escaping after the storm passes. This game can only end with my victory or yours. When time runs out, I will win by default. There will be no ties. Make sure that you do not misunderstand your current situation. So basically, like, what George was saying about waiting for the law is pointless, because then it'll be too late, right? Beatrice will come back, and she'll win by default. Or even if she doesn't come back, she still wins by default. Rose cooked. I'll find the song? Yes. Yes, please do. Yeah, very interesting. Do we have anything new about the characters? Probably not. No. Yeah, it doesn't look like it. Okay. Save one more time. Okay. Alrighty.